Okay, we're on physical and cognitive development in early childhood, and I'm out on the deck. Okay, bodily growth and change. Around age 3, they start looking more like children instead of babies. The limbs, we're still following that cephaloccaudal, proximal distal development as far as physical and motor skills. So their head is now larger, getting closer to an adult size. The body is longer, so now it's time for the limbs to start growing. As they do so, they get taller. We're looking for 2 to 3 inches, 3 to 4 pounds, somewhere in there per year. There's that, if you want to look at it. We do have a lot of problems with obesity. I am sure that the numbers are going up compared to what this has, because it is a few years old. Low-income children are going to have more problems. Around here it's particularly Hispanic males, but Hispanics in general, young children that are having problems with obesity. It comes with cheap food. It tends to be unhealthy food. Just the knowledge of what diet the children need. A lot of parents don't have any idea what they need to be feeding people, what they should be eating. If you want your kids to eat healthy, you need to walk the walk. Also, we talked about in class, just availability. Small stores tend to be more in the poorer neighborhoods. Their stuff tends to be more expensive, less of a choice. Supermarkets tend to be far away. So there are a lot of reasons for this. Also, we do have to consider hereditary factors. Genetics are important. Sleep patterns, I think I mentioned, I think 5-year-olds need naps. This kind of just shows that how sleep changes over time. Hopefully I know most of you aren't. You should be getting about 8 hours of sleep, but not many of us do. Sleep disturbances. I talk about night terrors and walking and talking together because nightmares are different. Nightmares occur during REM sleep. This is when we dream. This is when they believe that and research indicates that new information is integrated with old information. REM sleep's very important. If you don't get it, you don't learn near as well. That's one big problem with cramming the night before a test, trying to get everything in. A little bit each day would be better and less stressful. But nightmares are common. Kids have them, adults have them. A lot of different reasons why people may be having nightmares. If children experience something disturbing, saw a scary movie, saw something that worried them, during the day they may dream about it. Also, just the new information that's trying to be put in that can kind of lead to weird dreams and nightmares, or just dreams themselves. I wouldn't worry too much about the kids unless it's a real common, recurrent thing that causes them trouble in getting to sleep or sleeping during the night. You can use magic things. We used magic vapors to help our kid sleep when he was having problems. That was just some cheap perfume that came in a magazine, and that helped him sleep pretty well, and even when he was disturbed by nightmares and such. Unless it does disturb their day-to-day life, it's probably not a major issue. You might kind of look, if it's sudden onset, at what might have been going on to cause it, so you can maybe discuss it with the child and deal with it. Sometimes it is problematic, but generally not much to worry about. Night terrors and walking and talking in sleep occur generally during stage 3 and 4 non-REM sleep. This is when we're very deeply asleep. And when we're in REM sleep, generally our motor functions are shut down. There's a switch in the brain that shuts it down so that we don't act out our dreams. If we do, then it tends to cause problems. I don't think that same mechanism works as effectively in non-REM sleep, and that tends to be why we have these things that occur. Night terrors tend to be very quickly. It says abrupt awakening here, but really they generally are still asleep. What happens is you're generally within first 2-3 hours of putting the child to sleep, they'll sit up and start screaming. And so you'll run in to see what was happening, and they'll swat at you if you touch them and such, and really won't generally react to your talking to them. They'll quit it after a minute, lie back down, and have no memory of the night terror as sitting up, even talking, having you talk to them, anything the next day. It can be tied in with walking. Somebody posted, and I've had students say that they had children who got up and ran through the house screaming and were still asleep. Again, not generally a problem. It does seem to run in families. Most people do grow out of it to a great degree. Talking in sleep is in this point too, unless they're heading outside or doing dangerous things while they're asleep. It's not too much to worry about. Enuresis, bedwetting, is fairly common as far as it goes, 10 to 15%, so it's within the norms. 5-year-olds, it's considered primary bedwetting if it occurs more than 3 months after the child is 5. Sometimes once they've been toilet trained, they may regress and start bedwetting if they're stressed out. If there's a new baby in the family, major changes, we all regress under stress to some degree. So we may not go to bedwetting, but we go back to earlier ways of dealing with things. So that's no different for a child. Ways you can deal with it, it's also not a major problem unless the child is stressed out and it bothers them during the day. Their daily life causes them to miss sleep, that sort of thing. I do recommend not punishing. They don't mean to do this. It may be because they have poor bladder control, immature bladder control. It may be that they're hard to arouse, so they just don't feel it when they're going to wet their bed. But again, punishment really tends to drive it underground, and they will feel shame. They will try to hide it from you, which is more problematic because it's better to deal with the sheets and the problem when it's there than wait until you find them by smell. So I would say treat it like any other accident or spill or whatever. The child, some things to prevent it. Limit intake of fluids after supper. Teach them Kegels. And somebody asks, well, how you do that? Well, next time they're peeing, say, stop it. And they might take them a while. It may be part of the problem is that muscle is not real strong. So after they learn how to do it, just cutting off the flow of urine is the Kegel muscle group. So teach them to do that, and then they can do it anytime. It's good for adults, it's good for moms, it's good for dads, it's good for everybody. Everybody should be doing Kegels. If it continues to be a problem, my recommendation is to treat it like any other type of spill or accident. Clean it up. The child has to help. Strip the bed. If it is an ongoing problem, I'd have a plastic mattress cover to keep it from wetting the mattress with urine. But Kid gets to help strip the bed, change the bed, wash the sheets and the blankets, anything that's wet, their pajamas, whatever. It's just part of day-to-day life and cleaning up after our own mess-ups, and they learn good skills. I would say, generally they will want to improve, and if they're not stressed out and feeling shame, they will probably do it faster. If it does become major, it continues and causes problems, then seeing a doctor would probably be a decent idea. Brain development, by 6, the brain is almost as big as it's going to get. It's going to have lots more connections that need to be made, a lot more myelin production, but as far as the size of the package, it's about there. It's just going to become a much more complicated package. Corpus callosum connects the left and the right hemispheres so that they can work in conjunction and integrate. This is very important. Look up split brain experiments if you want to see what happens when the corpus callosum is not functional. Most important, and that this was a big miss on the last exam, the prefrontal lobe. The frontal lobe is the important part. The rest of it's important for sure, but the prefrontal lobe is where we do most of our thinking, the highest levels of thinking. And we really want to get plenty of nutrition to help that brain develop as much as possible. Sorry about the camera jiggling some. Motor skills, there are 2 different types of motor skills: gross motor skills, large muscle groups, running, jumping, walking, riding a bike, all those things. So it really has to deal with the large parts of the limbs. If you have problems with this, physical therapist is who's going to talk to you. Fine motor skills, hand-eye coordination, daily living skills, cooking, eating, these sorts of things have to do with fingers and getting by each day. Occupational therapists will deal with that. Handedness is still an issue to some people. Most people have gotten past punishing children for being left-handed. For being left-handed, but it still happens. It is a hereditary thing. The single gene theory says that there is a single dominant allele. If you have that allele, you are right-handed. If you don't, there's a 50-50 chance that you will be right-handed or left-handed. Our society is getting better. It does still discriminate against left-handed people by making most things only in right-handed versions, or having it cost more to make left-handed. Again, at least most people have gotten past your left hand is the devil's hand and the right hand is the angel's hand. But it's still out there for some folks. Just a chart to give you an idea of how representational ability and the ability of the fine motor skills that are necessary for art. Give you an idea where your child may be. See how they compare with others. I'm not sure what happened there. Well, there's some gross motor skill stuff. I'm not sure why it's on this thing, but oh well. So now we've got higher. Yes, okay. This one has more appropriate or modern numbers, more up-to-date numbers. 14% of 2 to 5-year-olds are obese. They are more likely to grow into obese adults, and this is problematic because the earlier you become obese, the longer a person is obese, the more damage is done. Okay, that slide was cut out of the other one. Okay. All right, malnutrition is also problematic. About a third of the world's children don't get enough food, and about 1 in 5 U.S. children don't get enough food on a real regular basis. This is a pretty sad statement. What's happening is when people growing children don't get enough of the nutrition and the fats that they need, healthy fats, it inhibits the brain growth or development. And so what we're dealing with is things that happen in childhood that will impact these folks for the rest of their lives if they aren't caught and helped as far as getting a good diet and such. Schools do pretty well, but school budgets are being cut, and if you want to know the truth, school diets are not the best diets in the world, but they're better than not getting enough food at all. Again, my feeling is we pay for these children with the lives that they lead. Jail, prison, special education, public dole, disabilities, we pay for it. It would be better to prevent it. Death by accident, major issue. In the United States, we talked about it in class, they're moving fast, so helmets are important, seat belts are important, safety issues, making sure the poison's put away, the guns are put away, the tools are put away, the sharp things, really helps cut down on the risk factors. Low SES in health. I think I mentioned in class that a poor, undereducated young mother with 3 or more children, her children are 15 times more likely to die of illness or injury than a mom who is in her 30s, 30, college educated, and 2 or less children. These are major statements. Part of it is just the ability to keep up with 3 or more kids. That's real tough. Part of it is the environment. Poor people have more dangers in their environment, both inside the home and outside the home. So it's just a major issue. Plus the availability of health care, preventive child checkups and such are just not as available. Here's some major things: lack health insurance, chronic health problems, vision and hearing loss, and then not catch that until they get into school. So you have children who are have difficulty learning to talk, learning to read, and they don't really understand, and very often their parents don't understand that there's a problem until the nurse at school finds it, or a teacher finds it, or something like that. That's years out of a child's life. Homelessness is poverty times 10. There's no base, no secure place for the child, moving around all the time, not having possessions more than they can carry, just not a good place, not a good thing. Poor people are much more likely poor children much more likely to deal with pollutants. Smoking, let's not do it around the children, let's take it outside. Air pollution, I've talked about that. Some cold morning, if you can, go out and look, get out from Lubbock and look, see where the smoke's coming from. Sewage plants over on the east side. Most big cities, poor people live around the places that are polluting, and it costs them. It costs their children. If you start exposing yourself when you're older, that's one thing. When you expose them when they're still developing, then the cancers that can come up tend to be real aggressive. Pesticide poisoning, again, that has a lot to do with crowded conditions, poverty, living close confines with apartments and such. Got to spray for those roaches real often. You put out those pretty pellets for the mice and the rats, and kids get a hold of those. So again, it tends to be much more problematic in the lower SES groups. Lead, again, yes, mostly for children. Gets through the food, water, and the air. If you've got a building that was built before the 70s, it's probably got lead in the paint, which can powder or peel and be eaten. It's probably also got lead in the solder on the plumbing, so the lead will leach out into that water, and then you're going to drink it or cook food with it. Schools are the same way. If your child is in a school that's was built prior to the 70s, if they haven't done just total renovation to take out the lead and the asbestos, because asbestos is common in buildings from the early 70s on, then your child is sucking up lead to some degree. And that's most of LISD, if I am correct, and most of the schools around here. Cognitive development, symbolic function, representational ability, remember that. Ability to use some symbols. Everything we do is in representations, is in symbols. And this allows us to carry information and to communicate information to each other. Very important function. Spatial abilities, we saw that in that video where the 2.5-year-old couldn't use the model to find the little Snoopy, or the big Snoopy, but the 3-year-old did it very well. It shows how quickly these abilities develop. It's mostly brain growth, but it's also experience. It's that prefrontal lobe developing all those connections and such. Very important. Some things seem to indicate, though, that maybe we are not asking children in the best way to demonstrate their understanding. So I think I mentioned it in class, it may be somewhat our problem in understanding how to present the question rather than their problem of understanding whether a scale model is a room or represents a room. Causality, do you know what transduction is? Mentally linking phenomena, whether logical or not. Children at this age tend to blame themselves. They tend to be egocentric. They blame themselves for everything that goes on or take credit for it. So if there's a death in the family, if there's a divorce, they may try to take the blame, frequently, try to take and blame themselves for what was happening. So you really need to talk to them about cause and effect and help them understand that they were really not the major problem. Familiarity with almost everything. We are talking a lot of Piaget here, and that was where he made a mistake as far as his understanding of children. He really didn't understand familiarity in the context of knowledge. People tend to know better things that they have experienced. Most of us do not do as well when we are dealing with things that we only have imagined or heard about. Animism, tendency to attribute life to an inanimate object. Bird fight. Generally, I talked about the Windy Man and the drawing in the kid's book about blowing clouds. Generally, it's... Woo, flew right under me. Generally, it has to do with moving things. Moving things tend to be alive. Again, if children understand dolls, if they've been around dolls, they understand dolls. Even Tickle Me Elmo is not a live thing. However, children who've never dealt with dolls might confuse Tickle Me Elmo with a living animal, or intelligent animal, and won't understand it. So again, context, surroundings, familiarity all impact how we all think about things. I'm not going to really get into that, so don't worry about the numbers. Okay, we are in pre-operational thought. This is Piaget's second. The first one was sensory motor. This one is pre-operational. So second stage, centration is focusing on one aspect of a situation, neglecting others. Piaget thought this was part of egocentrism, only seeing things from your point of view. He thought that conservation, children did not understand conservation because they only focused on the beginning point and the end point when the fluids were in the different glasses. They did not focus on the process of change. Again, this is called the serial effect in psychology. We tend to focus on the ends, the beginning of things and the ends of things, lists, songs, that sort of thing, and we tend to not focus on the center enough to remember it. So again, this is just something that people do. We call it immature, and it develops in some of us, but not all of us, and I don't think it goes away for most of us completely. What we're trying to do is help children decenter, or stepping back and looking at a situation from several different directions. Again, I use the analogy of your house. If you only see your house, the place you live, from the front, you never really understand the other parts of the house. So decentering is stepping back and looking at the house from all different directions and the inside so that you really understand your house as it truly is. This is problematic in lots of situations because truth is kind of a relative thing, particularly when we're dealing with subjective stuff. Conservation, something remains the same even if its appearance is altered. The glass experiment was mentioned in your book, also in the video. I talked about making a snake out of Play-Doh. Irreversibility is just part of it. That water can't go back into that first glass and as far as the children are concerned. And again, they don't watch the process and don't understand that the water continues to stay the same. As far as I talked about it, when I talked in lecture, I talked about making that snake and the child breaking the snake and crying because the snake is broken. They don't understand that you can wad that clay up again and make another snake. Okay, 3-mountain task. This was a Piaget experiment, and it was one of his flawed experiments. What they did is they asked the little boy or the child what the doll saw, and the doll, according to Piaget, during the research, the children answered they saw a tall mountain, a middle mountain, a shorter mountain, or the shortest. And Piaget said, well, that means they can't take the doll's view, so they still have egocentrism and immature thought processes. However, they tried another experiment with, because these were city kids and really had never been to the mountains, so they had no familiarity with mountains. When they did the experiment with a cop doll and a apartment or house type building, a home type building, then the children were very much better able to tell what the cop doll saw because they were familiar with police, they were familiar with apartments, places that they lived, but they weren't familiar with mountains. I compare it, when I talk in class, I say, if you're going to ask Lubbock students questions about subways, then you better be asking about sandwiches, because most of them have never been on a subway train. They'll do much better on subway sandwich questions than they will do on subway train questions. Theory of mind is just children's theory of how they think and other people think. Young children tend to think, when you ask them what they're thinking about and they say nothing, they tend to believe that that's what that they're actually not thinking about anything. They don't understand that mental activity continues all the time. Sometimes, if you're like me, you wish that you could make it stop for a little while, but I don't know how to do that. False beliefs and deceptions. Small children do not understand deception. They do not understand not knowing something. So in this experiment, they asked the child, what is in this crayon box? And the child says crayon box, or crayons, because, we wouldn't fake them out. Show them that there's candy in that crayon box, and then ask them what another child, Joe, will think is in the crayon box, and because they know it's candy, they think that Joe knows it's candy also. They don't understand that Joe could have a mistaken belief based on lack of information. So you need to know this, because if you are mistaken talking with your 3-year-old, sometimes 4-year-old, you are not mistaken. You are lying. If you tell them that you're going to go do something and something comes up, it's not out of your control, and you're lying to them. You lied about it. If you are mistaken in something that you say, and you say, "Oh, sorry, I was wrong," no, you lied about it. So do understand that. They don't lie very well. They don't understand lies very well. If you want to teach them to lie, and I kind of recommend it, because I don't know about you, but it's always been a pretty important survival strategy for me at times in my life. Hope that fly doesn't crawl over the camera. You need to start off with what I did was when I'd take my kids out, like 3-year-old, we were going to go buy a present for their mama. Do know that if you do that, the person you're going to buy for is going to know what you got them, because they can't lie. Children can't lie. They're going to tell the truth. You can kind of defeat that by telling them that you're going to play a joke on the person, and that you're going to tell them something else as a joke, and then sometimes they can keep the secret that way. Tell Mom that we got her a pony, and we'll all chuckle about it. Appearance versus reality just kind of demonstrates that they have trouble, again, carrying false beliefs through as far as it goes. Fantasy versus reality, well, this is one of those things that I think I forgot to mention that adults do animism. The computers, we cuss at them, we talk to our cars and things like that. This also goes into adult reality as well as children. Many of us, what they did an experiment, and they had told the children there were 2 boxes. One had a make-believe, an imaginary rabbit, bunny. The other one had a make-believe imaginary monster in it. So they knew that it was imaginary. There was actually nothing in the box, but the children had more trouble picking up the box with the imaginary monster in it. So even though they knew it was make-believe, they had trouble dealing with it. That's one of those things that we like to think we outgrow, but then think about the last time you watched a real scary movie and then had to sleep alone that night. The sounds that all of a sudden become scary, the worrying about things in the closet or under the bed. Lots of these kind of worries occur to us, even as adults. If you want to help your child with their ability to understand how their brain works and your minds work and other people's minds work, then give them lots of opportunity, lots of communication, lots of explanations. Help them understand what's going on in their head and what's going on in your head. Talk about your thoughts and emotions and how you deal with things. That is, if you want them to understand. Some people don't want understanding as far as the way they think or other people think. It makes them feel better not to know. Bilingual is a good thing. Real quick, I like to use the computer. It's not a totally good analogy or apt analogy, but on some levels it is, comparing the brain with the computer. First thing you have to do is encode information. We do that through our senses. Things come to us in various ways to our sensory mechanisms. We encode that into chemical and electronic signals, and then that's our brain can deal with that. When we put things into a computer that don't go in as pictures and as print and things like that, they go in as binary digits. They're either a 0 or a 1. They're open or close. And like a video, this video was going to be millions, probably anyway, bits of little information just saying rows of 1s and 0s. So that's really kind of the same way our neurons are either firing or they're not firing. They're either 1 or they're a 0. We need to store that information that comes through our senses, just like we store things in a computer. Again, generally what's stored in a computer is not all in one place. It's kind of scattered out. That's kind of how things are in our brains. Certain information is handled more in some areas than others, but it's still handled in many different places. Retrieval, the ability to get that information back, is important. Generally, it relates to cues. Cues include what's being discussed, what you're looking at, what you're thinking about. Your mood impacts what you think about and how you think about things, and what you can remember and what you can't. And again, same thing as kind of as a computer. I use the example of saving a file and forgetting what you named it and where you put it. Particularly if you're downloading something that goes into some temporary file that you've never heard about. Well, sometimes we file things around in our brain kind of like that too and have trouble. Okay. Sensory, working and short term are really two different words, or two different ways of describing the same type of memory. There's some distinction between the two, but as far as this class is concerned, they're pretty synonymous, so you won't have to differentiate them on a test. Sensory is survival memory. We are scanning the environment with our senses all the time, watching for, listening for, feeling for changes. because change is, we're really just environmentally hardwired to notice things when they change. If things don't change, then we tend to neglect them. Infants are extremely this way, and most of us are able to later on put distractions away and not notice them. But on some level, we do notice what's going on. Sensory memory can hold much information, but it only holds it for about a third of a second, unless it becomes important. Your drive out to school, well, take this example. You're driving a long drive through a boring part of some state, western Texas, eastern New Mexico. And all of a sudden you realize that you've been driving for hours, been through a couple of towns, and you don't remember them. Well, the reason you don't remember them, you were thinking about other things, but your brain was keeping up with what was happening with the car and the road, and there was just no reason at all to remember anything, because nothing happened that changed, was threatening, or made an impression on you. You will remember if somebody almost pulls out in front of you or cuts you off or something, then that will be something different, something that needs to be remembered. It was a threat, and so that will come into a longer term memory. But if nothing happens, then you tend to kind of blank out what's going on around us. Working short-term memory holds about, they say, 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information. It may be less than that. Some research shows maybe more like 5 plus or minus 2. And this is where sensory is survival. Working in short-term is where we live. Anything that you think about has been pulled from wherever it was to short-term memory. You work with it. That's the executive function, the central executive. You work with it. You try to pull up other information that goes along with it. Then if you don't use it, it goes back to generally long-term memory. So as you listen to me, you think about the things I say, I hope, and that is in short-term memory. If you are reading a test, you read the answer, the question, look at the answers. Hopefully that will pull information from long-term memory into your working memory, allowing you to use that, giving the correct answer, choosing the correct answer, and then you put that information back away because you don't need it. You go on to the next question. Short-term memory lasts about 30 seconds unless you do something to maintain it. And generally repetition is not sufficient. You need to come up with some way to make it yours, make it relevant to you. Kind of depends on what the information is. Long-term memory seems to be unlimited. Trillions of bits of information, and as long as the brain that it is stored in is undamaged, it's there. We probably don't really forget anything except if there's some sort of damage to where it is stored. But we learn so much, lots of times there's things that are lost that we can't find. Generic memories, these are the things that happen day to day. Think about back when you went to first grade, or when you were in the 7th grade, or when you were a sophomore. You probably don't remember most of what happened in those, because it was just a day-to-day thing. You probably remember significant things that occurred, or when disruptions in the routine occurred, better than you do just the day-to-day stuff. So that's why it's generic. Episodic is one type. Well, think about your favorite episode of a show. It's something that happened and your memory of it. Autobiographical tend to be episodic mostly, but can be generic. But even if you think back to when you were in first grade, you probably think about specific episodes of first grade instead of the generic stuff. So autobiographical memories are just how we remember getting where we are. You should know that memories are false. We never really remember things the way they were. But generally we do an okay, at least good enough job that we can get by. Social interaction really is just, most of us can remember back to about age 3. And there's lots of other things that happen between then and who you are today, or who we are today. Sometimes it's very difficult to remember or to be sure when what you remember is actually what you remember, or if it's what you were told about things. Like your parents or your siblings saying, well, you remember when? And then they tell you about something, and that kind of yeah, I remember that. Maybe not. It's like I said, memories are not truth. They're just kind of how we explain how we are, who we are today, how we became who we are today. Somebody once said, the past is just an excuse for who we are. And I kind of added to that and said, and memories are the lies we tell ourselves on how we got here. Intelligence. Okay, I told you about the only thing you need to remember on infant and toddler intelligence tests is that they are not verbal, and so they don't really demonstrate or predict IQ that well. IQ has a lot to do with verbal ability, vocabulary, reading, writing skills, those kinds of things. So once the kids are verbal and can read and write a little bit, at least talk in words using symbols, then the intelligence tests do better. At predicting, really about the only thing they can predict is how well or how long a child will do in school. Stanford-Binet is the oldest, the longest used intelligence test. The other, I'm not going to get into those really. Okay, Vygotsky. I like Vygotsky. I think he had some things to say. He talked about scaffolding and zone of proximal development. Whenever we teach a child, what he focused on was how children learned, and how they learned primarily from the people around them, their caregivers primarily, but then the other people around them. And what he did was what I learned was called a task analysis. If you want to teach your child to do something, you have to figure out all the steps that go into that. You may not do it like I was taught and write it all down on a piece of paper, but if you're going to teach your child to make a sandwich, well, you've got to get the paper plate or get a plate down. You've got to get the bread out. You've got each step or a whole series of steps that ends with a sandwich being made. If you ever do this, you're going to find out that there are steps that you really hadn't thought about as far as really teaching that sort of thing. But regardless, each of these steps is what Vygotsky called a scaffold. Scaffolds are the things you see on the sides of buildings, generally made out of metal with boards, so that workers can go up higher to work on things. If you start at the bottom, if you're building a building, well, you start at the bottom, you do all you can, standing on the ground, then you build a scaffold so that you can keep working up. and scaffolds go in steps. Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Each step is a level on the scaffold. And as the child becomes able to do each step, then you quit helping them, the parent quits helping them, and they do that independently. The part of the process that you've taught them how to get the bread out, you've taught them how to put the mayo or mustard on it, but you haven't taught them how to put the cheese and bread and meat and cut it in two. Well, the parts that the child hasn't learned that you're still helping them on is called the zone of proximal development. So it's what they still have to learn. But again, it's a step-by-step thing, using the scaffolding, and as they no longer need your help, they stand on their own for each step. What he talked about as far as IQ was the fact that kids who have lots of opportunities for learning, generally kids with educated parents, whose parents are motivated and interested in helping their children learn and be intelligent, are going to have a better start than kids who are in more of a impoverished or less stimulating environment. So again, generally, kids who are better off monetarily, families are better off monetarily, start out school with a higher IQ because of their opportunities to learn. So Vygotsky said, well, but you can't really tell how intelligent a child is going to be if they haven't had the opportunities to learn things. So what you need to look at for intelligence and to compare a wealthier child with a higher IQ and a poorer child with a lower IQ, you need to see how they learn to the next level, the next step. Since they're starting at different places, you can't say, well, want to see how fast they can do 100 math problems and give them the same math problems, because that one is going to do better. But if you look at where they are on whatever, math problems or whatever, and you compare how quickly they learn to the next level, then you can compare them. If they take the same amount of time, regardless of the start point, then they are of equal intelligence. If the low person who has less intelligence, according to the current IQ tests, actually learns faster than the one who's had more opportunities and a higher IQ, then that person actually is more intelligent than the person who starts off with the higher intelligence. Sorry, I just killed a fly. Language development, fast mapping, the ability to remember or to understand what a word means by listening to it in context. Once or twice we do that by listening. We also do it by reading. My kids came home using the term gay before we had a talk with them on what gay meant. They didn't know what gay meant, but what they did know was that it was not a good thing. Kids who were saying, well, that's so gay, did not mean that it was, happy, it was colorful. They meant something different by it. So we had to so they had the grasp of the meaning of gay, at least as it is used. We did use that as a learning opportunity, and we discussed gay, homosexuality, that sort of thing. By age 3, average child knows around 1,000 words, but they use about 12,000. So what that means is they repeat some words a whole lot. Mom is going to be one of the big ones. Why is going to be one of the big ones. No is going to be another one of the big ones. By age 6, they know about 2,600 and understand more than 20,000. Again, we're looking, when you discuss language development, we do think that it is a combination both of learning, listening, hearing the words, those sorts of things, but also that language acquisition device, just being able to understand so many words so quickly. It really isn't explained completely by behavior type stuff, learning. Grammar and syntax, they do better. That's as far as I need to help on that one. Pragmatics, pragmatic means practical. There's a truck coming, I'll talk louder. Pragmatics, how we use language to communicate. Knowing how to ask for something and how to do it. Pragmatics is how successful you are at asking for something. Demanding something, anything else. Social speech, speech intended to be, it's for communication. We talk to other people to communicate with them. Animals too, maybe. Machines sometimes. Private speech, again, Piaget and Vygotsky had a different view of private speech. About 50%, or I think up to 50% of speech in 5 to 10-year-olds, I think if I'm remembering correctly, is private speech. It's speech only geared for their ears. Most of us learn not to talk aloud to ourselves. Bluetooths really weird me out because I can't tell when somebody's talking to me or talking to themselves or talking to somebody someplace else. Because generally people who talk out loud to themselves in half a conversation aren't the best people. Well, actually I have had some really interesting conversations with them. But most of us learn not to do that. We do, Piaget thought that this was egocentrism and immaturity. Vygotsky said, no, really, what it is it's children telling themselves the things that they have learned. And if you listen to them very often, it's if they're doing something, I'd say example I use is folding towels. If you listen to them as they talk to themselves as they fold the towels, they're telling them the same things that you told them when you were teaching them to fold the towels. And later on, they'll probably still talk to themselves, but it'll be quietly. They'll think to themselves instead of talking out loud. So sometimes it's reminders, no, good boys don't do that sort of thing. Good boys don't touch sharp tools. So they are telling themselves what you have been telling them or what others have been telling them. That seems to be closer to the truth if truth is there. About 3% of school-age children do have delayed language. It may be problems in fast mapping. It can also be problems in hearing problems. If they can't hear all the language or all the sounds in the language, they're not going to have as much luck in making the sounds of the language. So it may cause problems in their the way they express themselves in their language, as well as the way they hear language. So I'd say a hearing test is a pretty important thing. And again, people with insurance will have access to the hearing tests. People who don't have health insurance are less likely to have the opportunities to check to see how their child is doing. So their children may again lose out in a few years of abilities that we take for granted. Okay, so the language, your interaction, your communication gives them the basics, the underlying qualities, skills needed for reading. phonemic awareness, understanding that words are composed of sounds. Social interaction is extremely important. Computers can do some of it, but not anything like you can do. Reading to your children, helping them understand that reading is very important, that it's fun, that it's a good way to do, a good thing to do. You need to walk the walk. Preschools, And I don't think our child, I think we're shifting more toward academically focused. Things are much more about academics in preschools now in the United States, particularly the ones that are, the people who've got money want to send their kids to. Again, I'm kind of down on it. I think it's okay for kids to be kids, and I think we're kind of cheating them out of something, but that's my opinion. We do have compensatory preschools. Head Start is the longest one. And what it's doing is hopefully providing at-risk students the things that people who have more money will provide for their kids. So poor kids, kids with lower IQs, preemies, that the earlier we can get these kids into an enriched learning environment, the better they tend to do. And this can help a whole lot on a lot of different levels. I mean, we talked about food. They can get food. They get stimulation, learning opportunities that they tend to not get at home. That makes them feel better. That makes them better able to deal with other people. Buy into the social responsibility. I mean, how many times have you heard people, well, if they didn't want to be poor, they would work harder. Well, a lot of people do work real hard and are very poor, but they don't make very much. 60 hours at minimum wage, 2 different jobs because you can't get benefits. Nobody wants to hire people full time. That's going to be different than if you are making $100, $200, $300 an hour. So hopefully when we help poor children understand better that they can do other things, and we give them more of the nutrition, more of the stimulation, then they are much more likely to be what we consider contributing responsible adults. But again, there are a lot of people who don't see it that way and see things like Head Start as free daycare, basically. And it can help the whole family because I've got students who are first generation, and I would bet that a lot of them, their parents had no thought that their children would be going to college. And now they're going to college, they're accomplishing things that for many anyway, that has to be a good feeling for a parent to think, yes, I did something right by that child. Kindergarten is now first grade. My LP used to sub for kindergarten a lot, and all they did was worksheets. It can be beneficial. Again, generally it is beneficial, and people who can afford it generally have their kids in preschool. Better preschools are better. What can I say? It's good to have preschool.